In honour of the late great Britt Allcroft, I'm going to revisit Thomas and the Magic Railroad, her 2000 masterpiece. I know I already covered this movie in my first year of Thomascember, and I did another video a few years later talking about some of the deleted concepts from the director's cut. But looking back at my first review of the movie, I do realise that I did take a lot of the wording from Doug Walker's DisneyCember review of The Lion King. I was young and unoriginal at the time. And it had been years since I watched this movie, so I thought I'd go back and watch it this year in honour of Britt Allcroft and see if my opinions had changed much on it. It's a well-known fact that the movie received overwhelmingly negative reviews from critics upon its release, and it didn't make that much back in the box office, but did leave an impact on the fan base, and did make its money back in VHS and DVD sales and toy sales. But after I go through the story real quick, I'm going to go through what I didn't like about the movie, and then what I did like about the movie. The plot of the film is centred on Lily Stone, played by Mara Wilson, the granddaughter of the caretaker Burnett Stone, played by Peter Fonda, who is guarding an enchanted steam engine who is lacking an appropriate supply of coal, and Mr. Conductor, played by Alec Baldwin of Shining Time Station, whose provisions of magical gold dust are at a critical low. Lily and Mr. Conductor enlist the help of Thomas the Tank Engine, who confronts the ruthless steam engine-hating Diesel 10 along the way. Everybody has their own opinions on why this movie failed in the box office, but I'm not going to talk about everything that the movie failed at, I'm not that heartless, but I am going to explain what I personally didn't like about the film. The most obvious one is the fact that Thomas is barely in the movie. Most of the screen time is given to all the human characters, and even though Thomas's name is in the title of the film, he barely shows up in the film. He just shows up, does his work, does a couple of things, and then we move on to the human characters. That's not really great for a movie that's supposed to be about Thomas the Tank Engine. The other thing that doesn't work is the fact that they brought in the Shining Time Station characters. Well, most of them anyway. The real downside of that is that no one outside of America has ever heard of Shining Time Station because it never aired outside of America as far as I know. It most definitely never came to the UK, so British fans of the show will have no idea who the hell these new characters are. So it really seems like Britt Allcroft was just trying to make a crossover between Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends and its American counterpart, which I personally find very weird because Shining Time Station ended not long before Series 5 aired on TV. So I'm honestly not sure how many American fans would have even remembered Shining Time Station at that point. But I am speaking as a British fan and don't know much about Shining Time Station, so I can't really comment on that. But it is kind of weird how they'd cross over a show between another show when no one's heard of the spin-off show. Now, it would have made more sense if they'd done a Tugs and Thomas the Tank Engine crossover because everyone in Britain had heard of them. And they used the same techniques. And even though I've never really heard of Shining Time Station at that point, nor was that familiar with it, I do still enjoy the human characters in this movie a little bit more than I did when I first reviewed the film. Alec Baldwin has a lot of fun as Mr. Conductor, and you can really tell how much fun he's having playing the character. The late Peter Fonda as Burnett Stone is really enjoyable as well, and he's really given it his all with the emotional moments. Mara Wilson does a great job as Lily Stone, and this would be her final role as a child actor. Michael E. Rogers is a great blast as Junior, and like with Alec, you can tell how much fun he's having. Lovely touch bringing back Diddy Kong as Stacey Jones from the TV series, and the late Russell Means as Billy Two Feathers was also a nice addition. And whoever trained the dog to do his parts in the movie deserves an award. And the idea of live actors interacting with the models is just an amazing one, even back in the 2000s. This is the first and only time I know of that live actors actually interacted with the models from the TV series. It's just such an amazing visual to me, and I'm still surprised they haven't done it ever since. I'm also surprised that we didn't have engine crews in this movie. It shows us that the engines drive themselves somehow. Now that was a real missed opportunity to not have actual drivers and firemen in their cabs, especially since they had live scale models of some of the engines in the movie. Great idea, but a missed opportunity. And much like Thomas not having enough screen time in the movie, the other engines on Sodor don't have that much spotlight either. And when they do show up in the movie, it is a highlight. This is how I'd imagine the island of Sodor looking like on the big screen. The colours of the island and the feel of escapism present in the TV series is evident here. You can really tell that there was a lot of effort thrown into this movie, despite it being a failure in the box office, and using an American spin-off that no one in the UK had heard of. The movie introduces us to 3 brand new engines, starting with Lady, a kind, wise engine who is respectful to others. She tries her best to help others either directly or through dispensing sage advice. Lady is a freelance design created by the designers of Thomas and the Magic Railroad. One of Lady's concept art images depicts her as a 222 resembling Gazelle, a Dodman & Co. 042 WT locomotive from the Shropshire and Montgomeryshire Railway. David Ives originally intended Lady to be based on the GWR 3031 class. However, Britt Allcroft wanted her to be a small engine. Coincidentally, the Hornby Emily was manufactured using the repainted GWR 3031 class. All members of this class were scrapped with no preserved examples, with a non-fictional replica of number 3014, the Queen, eventually being constructed at the Windsor and Elton Centre railway station. And I thought it was a lovely touch that Britt Allcroft herself voiced this character, and she only made one appearance in the TV series after this, that being the 60th anniversary special Calling All Engines, and she never showed up again afterwards. We're also introduced to Splatter and Dodge, simple-minded, awkward and cowardly diesels who tend to banter. Splatter is the more talkative of the two, while Dodge is more intelligent. Although Percy fears them, and they may think they are tough, they do not have the intelligence nor villainy to match Diesel 10s. They enjoy watching Diesel 10's plans backfire, but are also prone to making a mess of things. Despite initially siding with Diesel 10, they seem reluctant to destroy a fellow engine, even a steam engine, and eventually abandon Diesel 10 at the end for some reason. Splatter and Dodge were originally based on freelance designs, but in the final cut of the movie, they were based on British Rail Class 08 diesel electric shunters, a very common engine to appear in the TV series. And in the final cut of the film, Splatter was voiced by Neil Crone and Dodge was voiced by Kevin Frank, while in the original work prints they were meant to be voiced by Michael Angelis. And you can hear quite a few examples of his original voice for the characters on deleted scenes that are found on YouTube at the moment. And I highly recommend checking them out if you want to see them for yourselves. And then we have the best thing to come out of the movie, and the only legacy the movie carries. Diesel 10, an evil, villainous, manipulative, mischievous, and ravenous diesel engine who basically acted like a tyrannical boss-like figure to Splatter and Dodge. He absolutely despises steam engines, would call them taunting names like Puffball, Teapot, and Tin Kettle, and was not above doing anything to get rid of them if possible. His plans in the movie were to find Lady, destroy her, and use her magic to dominate Sodor, reducing all the steam engines into scrap. Diesel 10 is based on a British Rail Class 42 diesel hydraulic engine with an added non-regulation hydraulic claw. In real life, the addition of a hydraulic claw to a locomotive would most likely be considered illegal, if not approved by government authorities. It would additionally cause issues with the loading gauge, meaning the engine would be unable to fit under many bridges and tunnels. The first concept arts of Diesel 10 revealed that his claw was going to come out through a hatch in his roof, and that would have been an awesome visual to see on the big screen. But I assume this didn't happen because they didn't have it in the budget, nor did they have the technology to do it at the time. And personality-wise, Diesel 10 is just so enjoyable to watch. He acts like this big menacing threat to the island of Sodor, but in reality he's kind of a joke. He comes across as this annoyance the engines have to deal with sometimes when he's around, and they don't even take him seriously sometimes. But when he gets serious or mad, he's actually really threatening. Some of the best examples of this is when he threatens to throw Mr. Conductor off the viaduct, and then later on when he tries to back James and Junior into a smelting pit. He's a great range of character in the movie, and that of course is thanks to the voice performance of Neil Crone, who you could tell was just having a ball with the role.
I'm working on the railway all this long day. Who wants to work a live long day anyway?
Now, it's been said many times that Diesel 10's dialogue in the movie was actually improvised by Crone, and he wasn't meant to be so comical originally. But making the villain comedic actually worked really well in his favour, and all of the improv lines are really funny.
Make the most of tonight, Twinkle Toes, because you won't like tomorrow. Neither will that line of tin kettles. Shut up, Pixie.
While the events of the film are never mentioned again in the show, he continued to make occasional appearances in feature-length specials and a Christmas episode. That just shows how memorable the evil Diesel with the claw really is among the fan base, and the production team for that matter. And the soundtrack for the movie is just so gorgeous to listen to. Hummie Mann really nailed it out of the park with his composing for the film. And like I said in my very first review, I originally thought that O Donnell and Jr. Campbell came back to compose the music for the film, since the music has the same charm that they had in the TV series. But it turns out that Hummie Mann just gave the exact same effort and heart. And I can only imagine he got some advice from Mike and Junior before composing the music for this film, saying that they never talked down to the kids when it came to the soundtrack for the TV series. And Hummie Mann clearly followed their advice, since the music is just as engaging as it was in the TV series. Light-hearted when it needs to be light-hearted, and threatening when it needs to be threatening. Everything you come to expect from Thomas the Tank Engine's music. So while Thomas and the Magic Railroad isn't as good as I remember it to be when I was a kid, I do still get a lot of pleasure out of it. I'd call it a guilty pleasure of mine. I know some elements of the movie don't make sense from a realism standpoint, and some things are completely out of place in the franchise and would definitely be out of place in the main show, but I still enjoy aspects of it. Those aspects being of course the engines whenever they show up on the movie, and of course Diesel 10 as the main villain. And all the voices for the characters feel just right to me. These are the characters that we grew up with in the TV series, and most of their voices seem to fit the characters. The only voice that doesn't fit a character in my opinion is Susan Roman as James. Now don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Susan Roman. Hell, one of my favourite performances for her was Snowy in the animated series of The Adventures of Tintin, but her voice just doesn't seem right for James the Red Engine in my opinion.
I was naughty and Sir Topham Hatt told me to think about all the ways I can be really useful. Then I can come out again.
And rewatching the movie really makes me wish that they kept Michelangelis' performance like we heard in the original work prints, since his James voice is simply iconic for the franchise.
My wheels were feeling worn out with work, so Sir Topham Hatt told me to think about all the ways I can be a really useful engine. And when I have, I can come out again.
But with the upcoming release of the director's cut next year, we'll hopefully get to hear the original voice from Michelangelis and all the other actors that were originally going to be in the movie. And as you'll remember, in April of 2023, I went on a rail trail to the Isle of Man and got to see the steam railway. So that gave me the opportunity to visit the station in Castletown where they filmed the Shining Time moments for the movie. And it was just very interesting for me to learn that they filmed a majority of the live action scenes on the Isle of Man, the very island that inspired the island of Sodor. Very fitting place to film Thomas's first big screen adventure, isn't it? So yeah, not exactly the best the franchise had to offer, but it's still a fun guilty pleasure of mine, and a joy to watch all these years later. It's a movie that I do recommend watching if you do love Thomas the Tank Engine and friends, and are a big fan of Diesel 10. It may not be great, but it's still one of the best feature-length movies the franchise had to offer compared to the other feature-length specials we got from Hit Entertainment and Mattel. So feel free to check out this movie for yourselves and come to your own conclusion, because having rewatched it myself, I've come to mine.